everyone, welcome to Girlpub TV. I have been on holiday for the last week, so there hasn't been a video, but now I am back and I am making videos on a weekly basis once again, so hi. I got a request from a viewer a couple of weeks ago on YouTube for a specific video which was about salary negotiation and tips for negotiating your salary. So that is what this video is going to be about today. So as you know, I am a freelancer, I'm self-employed, so my salary doesn't really exist. I don't have a yearly salary like you would if you were working full-time for a company. I obviously get paid job by job. So I'm going to split this video into two. I'm going to talk about negotiating your pay as a freelance worker and also negotiating your salary, because I know quite a lot of people who are in full-time employment and I've managed to gather some tips from them about negotiating a yearly salary from an employee as well. So first of all, starting from a full-time employment perspective, I think the first thing you need to think about is whether or not to negotiate in the first place. And this is a decision that everyone needs to make for themselves, and it works on a kind of case-by-case basis. So you know your boss, you know your company, or if you're going into a new job, then obviously you have the information that you have, however much that may be. And the first thing that you need to decide is whether it's worth and appropriate having this conversation at this stage. You might be in a position where you feel like you're being underpaid, where other people doing the same job as you are getting more money, whether perhaps your last job could match the money that you're being offered coming into a new job, in which case you might feel that it's an appropriate conversation to have. You might feel that your company is under a lot of pressure and you're aware that there's not a lot of spare money to go around, and this is the only salary you've got and you need it to pay the rent. And maybe this isn't the best time to raise that conversation. So it's really up to you to make that decision based on what you know of your company, the relationship you have with your boss and the people who are paying your wage, and also the situation that you have personally in terms of money and different options. If you are in a full-time job and you want to negotiate your salary for a pay rise, then I think going into that conversation, the most important thing is to be prepared. If you decide that you're going to go ahead with it, you need to make sure that you're going into it in a professional, diplomatic way, not led by emotions, but led by reason. And you want to have some notes, some preparation there as to why you feel you deserve a pay rise, because I think it's probably not enough to go into a meeting with your boss and just say, I'd like some more money please, because they're probably going to want to know why. And that's a fair enough question for them to ask. So you want to be prepared with that answer. You want to be able to say, what it is that you've been doing, why perhaps your responsibilities have increased since you started the job, why you feel like you're now doing the work that is worth more money than it was previously. So kind of have that ready to go and let it be a calm, professional, mature conversation. And be prepared for both answers. Know what your feelings are and what your response is going to be if they say yes, and also what it's going to be if they say no. And also be ready to negotiate. So it may not be a yes or no. It may be, yes, we're willing to give you a pay rise, but only by X amount, which is perhaps not how much you were hoping. So be ready. Know where your limits are. Know what your response is going to be. Even if that is simply, thank you very much for your time. I'm going to go away and think about it. I'll come back to you on Monday. If you're going into a new job and you're applying for a job, sometimes it can be a tricky thing to ask for a higher salary, because at this point you haven't even proven yourself yet. But it's not something that's impossible. You can do it. And I think a good way to go about it is to ask the question, is the salary negotiable? So quite often when you go for a job, you will have been given an idea of roughly what the salary is going to be. Now they may come to you and they may say, what are your expectations salary-wise? So be prepared to answer that question if they come to you first. And in that case, it might be quite nice also to have a range. So if you don't want to say a specific number, you could say, I'm looking for a job within this to this price range or salary range. And then if they don't come to you and they just give you a salary on the plate, then you can ask the question, is the salary negotiable? And as I said in point one, this is something where you have to judge whether it's appropriate or not, given the circumstances around you, whether you've got another job to go back to or not, whether this one's, make or break for you. if you know whether they're really keen on hiring you or not, if you're lucky enough to have that information during the process, or if maybe they're looking at loads of people. So have a think about it. But if you decide to go for it, then just ask the question, plain and simple, is the salary negotiable? And see what their response is. And again, be ready with your responses, whether they say yes or no, or yes a little bit but not that much, and so on. And be ready to say how high or how low you're ready to go. So from a freelance perspective, if you are getting paid on a job-by-job basis, there are some different tips that I would like to share. And the first one is to know your rates and don't be afraid to say them. So when you're first starting out as a freelancer, I think it's one of the biggest questions, one of the trickiest things, to come up with a rate that you feel is appropriate for your work. And in some cases people will charge by the time, or they might charge by the amount of work. People do things in different ways, so figure out what works best for you, and what would be fair for you and for your clients. And then once you know your rates, try and keep them consistent, and don't be afraid to say them when people ask. Don't be apologetic. I think, again, as a new freelancer, I kind of felt like I was wincing a bit as I was telling people. I was going, it's this per hour, waiting for them to say, that's ridiculous. But in fact they didn't, because they appreciated that I was doing a good job for them. And so then it's fair that I get paid my rates. But nowadays, having done it a bit longer and done lots of good work for people and had people pay me, I'm used to the process. So now when people ask me, I just tell them, and I don't expect them to say it's ridiculous, and they don't say it's ridiculous. So be ready with your rates, and be honest, and just be straightforward with people when they ask, and confident in the amount that you're asking for. So whereas if you're working in a full-time permanent position, your salary is generally going to stay pretty much the same. You're not going to have to talk about it on a daily basis. As a freelancer, because you're going into new jobs with new clients again and again all the time, people are probably going to ask if you can change your rates at all. They might say that they don't have the budget for what you're asking. They might say that the quote is a bit too high. Is there anything we can do? And really what you have to be prepared for there is just to have that conversation, to know what circumstances are okay to change your rates and what ones aren't. So you need to just have some thought about that beforehand, before you go into giving people quotes, before you go into telling people your rates. Have an idea in your mind of what you're prepared to change and how much and under what circumstances. So if you do feel that it's worth giving a discount, for example, or lowering the cost for whatever reason, then explain what that reason is. Don't just say, okay then, I'll just do it for cheaper. Have something in mind. So for example, you could give a percentage discount on a first job. So if you're working with someone for the first time, you could say, as this is our first job together, I'm going to discount the quote by 10%, for example. Or you might say, well, if you can give me regular work over the next year, every month, or over the next 6 months, or however it is that you work, then you can have the rate lower. So figuring out something for a bulk deal, basically. So there are various different things you can do to negotiate that without just dropping your prices indefinitely. And it's just really about trying to find a way that makes it work for you and for the client, so that you're not giving away valuable work for nothing, which would be a waste of your time given that you're in business, but equally that they can benefit from your work and from your help without it ruining their budget as well. So it's just trying to find that balance each time without compromising your rates, but making it work for them as well. Now, every now and again, you will come to a situation where someone is offering you a rate that is just simply too low for you to be able to justify taking. And as a freelancer, as someone who's self-employed, that's your call to make. So if you feel that you're in a situation where someone is offering you work, but the rate is just too low, then you can negotiate, you can try and see if there's anything they can do, if you could, do them a deal, do them a discount, so on and so on. And if there's really nothing there and it's just far too low for you, then you may just have to say no. I think it's worth having that conversation in an honest, upfront way, because you never know. It might be that with this budget they can't afford you, but with the next budget they can. And if you have a good working relationship with these people, then they may want to come back to you and offer you a bit more money at another time. I think you have to remember that it's not personal, it's business. So people are working with a given amount of money, and if they don't have the money for you now, that doesn't mean that they don't want to work with you or they won't want to work with you again in future. It just means that this isn't the right job. So if you have to be honest with someone, then just politely say, look, you know, I can't really justify doing the work for that rate at the moment, but I'd love to work with you again in future. You know, let me know if anything comes up, and just be polite about it, and they will probably come back to you another time if they feel that your work is worth a bit more money when they have a bit more money to give. So I hope you found these tips useful, whether you are a freelancer like me or whether you are working full-time for someone. Again, just a case of figuring out step by step with every individual job, every boss, every client, case by case, how you want to deal with these situations, whether it's worth negotiating or not, by how much, how hard you want to drive the line or not. It's really just up to you to judge that. But hopefully if you do decide to go in for some negotiation, these tips will be helpful for you. And again, I think it's just a case of being honest and professional and diplomatic in all cases. So hopefully that's helpful to you. If you'd like to learn some more about me, then just go to my website, www.gilbhub.com. You can check out my other videos on my YouTube channel, and you can also visit me on Twitter at @HannahGilb. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.